The first thing that you have to remember is when you represent a beer brand and there will be crown caps involved, always keep an opener with you. They make great gifts, but the client will know that you came prepared. The second thing is if you're doing tasting, don't do it with warm beer. The beer always needs to be cold. Even if it's a spot tasting, figure out how to send the beer to the bar well in advance so it's in the fridge, or you guys can chill it at your home. Take a nice bag with some ice. When you pull the beer out, the beer should always be cold. In case you don't have an opener, you go to any bar, use a spoon. This is a neat little trick. You take a bottle, I'm using this one as of now, grab it, use the spoon as a lever, and as you push your finger on top, you see the open. It's nice and easy. You always set up beer, wine, whiskey, or any kind of alcohol from lower strength to higher strength, from lighter flavors to darker and stronger flavors, which is the easiest way to remember. Always have a glass of water next to you so you can refresh your palate. We guys behind the bar always like detail-oriented salespeople who know and appreciate the product that they're selling. If you do not appreciate it, we will never appreciate it. There are a few things that you always need to remember, including the fact that more than just the tasting, the setup is super important. We have been able to develop a nice chart which is laid out based on the rules of tasting different liquids, from lighter flavor beer to heavier flavor beer, and lower alcohol to higher alcohol. So most of the job is done for you. Whenever you're tasting, the way our mat is designed, the first one that would always get poured out for tasting is the Bira 91 Light. Keep the glass tilted so it's not too big a hit, and pour it in a slanted fashion so the beer does not get super agitated and all the carbonation inside does not get pushed out. Next up, we're going to move to a 4.5%, which is the blonde summer lager. I would encourage your client or your guests to taste it as the beer gets poured out, so you can continue having a conversation with them. The beer is best when it's super cold and it's fresh and it's right in front of you. Do not wait too long for the clients. They should not be waiting till all of the beer gets poured out. As you're pouring in, continue having a conversation. Whenever you're placing it in front of your clients, make sure that the label's forwarding them, because subconsciously they'll keep on seeing the label and they'll remember what you're talking about. Do remember, if you ever have the opportunity to taste all the beers, it takes a fair amount of time to lay them all out. Try to give them the beer, and as soon as it's open and it's cold, get them to taste it. So it's freshest when it's just open and it does not get warm. Talking about the third beer, which was the anomaly, but more based on the weight of the beer and the flavor profile, is the 8%, and it's relative to the beer that was poured right before the blonde. So I'm going to go with the boom. Always in beer tasting and wine tasting, there are a few anomalies that you got to account for. People will understand, don't stress too much about it. But in terms of flavor, it's not as heavy as the beers which will follow. If you remember, we are talking about the Gateway portfolio. Get it in there. Compared to the other beers, the flavor profile is not super heavy, yet the alcohol content is higher. If you were just tasting based on alcohol strength, then this would probably come the second last compared to the strong. At 8%, a great little beer to have in the middle. Also, when you're tasting, make sure that your client and you keep on refreshing your palate. Next up, we are going to move on to light but still more flavor heavy beer. The wheat is incredible, what we call as the Bira white. Pour in here. You will already see that in terms of body, just by looking at it, it's a heavier beer. You can see already that the color is getting a little bit more milky, a little bit darker. Immediately tells you that this beer will be a lot more flavorful compared to what we were having before. You pay a lot of attention to this one. This is a crowd pleaser. The colder the wheat beer, the better it will always taste. So make sure that you keep your beers chill. From the limited release, I'm going to pull out the Indian Pale Ale. Pour it in. With this, I would never really worry about too much of a head. Keep a nice, easy, consistent one. That's good. In terms of my wash line during tastings, I keep it about a finger or maybe two, which is the best. Don't worry too much about the head. Again, if you look at the color in terms of rules that we were talking about during the tasting, we are moving from lighter style beers or lighter colored beers to slightly heavier. It's crisp, clean, but a much darker golden hue on the Indian Pale Ale. Not super bitter, but easier to consume. The bitterness is built with a little bit of pomelo going in. Next is Malabar Stout in collaboration with Lutokai. It's super milky, creamy, and as a stout beer that I have been looking for a long time in Indian. Guinness is not available anymore. There are not a lot of stout beers that we do get. This is a great little interpretation. Chocolate, dark flavors coming through, but still very silky on the palate. I find it super easy to sell to consumers because everyone does love their coffee. Now, when you want to get the job done fast, this is the strongest beer in terms of flavor as well as the alcohol strength that goes into it, which is the strong. If you even see the monkey flexing his muscles there, be a little bit careful. I would drink a lot more of this during festivals and events rather than at a bar, right? But still, a lot of bars do like to have strong beer. You want to get the job done super fast. And that brings you to the Bira portfolio. Your glass needs to be clean, no smell in there. The beer has to be as cold as possible. Fill the glass all the way to the top. No halfway measures. Keep a mat with you if you can. Always remember, you go from light to dark, low alcohol to high alcohol, and low flavors to higher flavors. If you know this, you can taste wine, you can taste cocktails, you can taste whiskeys, and in our case, you can do beer. And that you need to remember and how to work your way around it is the boom, which is at 8%, but the flavor is a little bit softer than the limited release. So you need to know how to position it out. Stay active, you will get better as you do it more. You don't need to be an expert, you just need to practice this in your house. Cheers.